Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. Um, Welcome to this webinar on social enterprise as a business model. My name is Rosemary Peters-Gallagher, and I'm chair of the charity and not-for-profit group within the Ulster Society. And we're delighted to present this webinar. There's been a great deal of interest in it. We have two expert speakers, so we're going to be exploring social enterprise and how they can create meaningful impact whilst also achieving financial success. So they are businesses as such. And our expert speakers will tell us about how you can drive positive change, or they're driving positive change through social enterprise. Our first speaker is Diane Hill from the Now Group. And most of you will be aware that the Now Group is the charity that's on the charity lunch next month. So they're our sponsored charity. Diane is Director of Business and Organisational Development for the Now Group, which is a huge organisation, including Loaf Catering, Jam Card, Gauge, and various other strategic partnerships, which most of you will be aware of. So she'll give us an overview of the social enterprise model and how it operates across Now as a business model whilst creating social impact. Then we'll have Phelim Sharvin, who will talk about Community Finance Ireland. He's in charge of European Regional Development, Economics and Business Management within CFI, which is an All-Ireland and the only All-Ireland organisation of its nature. So he will tell us about funding that's available and how they're helping charities and social enterprises. So without further ado, I will pass you over to Diane, who will share her screen. If I could just remind you, if you have any questions, just pop them into the box or any chat, and we'll deal with questions at the end. So over to Diane. You're very welcome, Diane.
Hi, everybody. I hope you can see that okay. So thank you, Rosemary. I'm delighted to be here today, and we're always keen to promote what social enterprise does and the impact it can have within Northern Ireland, but also to give a bit of an overview about what we do as a social enterprise, to put into context for everybody what a social enterprise does as a business and how that can create impact within Northern Ireland and more recently into Ireland throughout Now Group. So Now Group has been going for 21 years. We originated in North and West Belfast on the back of parents who recognised the need for people with learning difficulties and autism who required that extra support into jobs and specifically with a future. Over that time now, we have developed throughout Northern Ireland and more recently into Dublin, where we have a site there, and we just recently received funding to provide employment opportunities and create independence for people with learning difficulties and autism. So I initially wanted to give a bit of context because I think many people know what a social enterprise is. I think it's just quite confusing for anybody thinking about how it is as a business, and we get this on an ongoing basis. So the social enterprise model, I'm sure many of you understand the financial aspect of it, but it is looking at this as a specific business. And as I go through the social enterprise models that we have within Now Group is the overarching organisation, and it's almost seen into two parts. So we have the charitable side of the business, which is focused around the community aspect, the jobs, the opportunity for people to develop. And that is through funding that we are restricted on, and we deliver on the requirements on that. The social enterprise side of the business is focused across each individual model and looking at each business to ensure that it's viable as a standalone business. The difference, obviously, for a social enterprise compared to a normal business is that profits are reinvested for social purpose. And for us, it is supporting people with learning difficulties and autism into jobs with a future. And no matter what we do across the social enterprise, so I was brought in 6 years ago to look at the sustainability of the organisation. So as we look at opportunities for Now Group to develop further, it all has to link up with our mission and our strategy to ensure no matter what we're doing as a business, it all aligns back to our overarching mission. And social enterprises they're specifically having social objectives as their primary goal. And that is the difference from a social enterprise from a private organisation. Lots of private organisations will have social objectives, but our difference is it's our primary goal, and that will continue to be no matter what we're doing across the business. And we measure impact of the individual and community as a result of business. So I think that's the thing that people continually try to do, and I'm delighted now the private organisations are starting to do this as well, is look at, as we're creating impact for people, so what does that actually mean? How do we delve deep to ensure that is actually adding value to people's lives? Because if not, there's no point in doing it. So I wanted to give you a bit of an idea about us as an organisation. So as I said, our mission is to support people with learning difficulties, and autism into jobs with a future. And that has been our mission. We're just coming up to the end of our 4-year mission. It was 3 years and we added one on with COVID. We're about to link into our 3-year strategy going forward. So we work like any other organisation. We look at our strategies, we look at the plans that need to roll from them, and we report on them as part of our objective scorecards across the organisation. Our strategic priorities are the same as anybody else. Looking at the employer, the customer, the employee experience. So we look at that across the organisation, no matter what we're doing. Our first and foremost one will always be our outstanding participant experience. And we do that for any part of our business, from a co-design model to ensuring we're adding value on a continual basis. If we're growing the business or we're changing direction, we include our participants to ensure we're doing what's right for participants and what's needed. And we'll always look at growth and sustainability for the organisation. And I suppose when I came into the organisation 6 years ago, we were just on that journey of getting people to think it's okay for us to make profits. It's what we do with them and reinvesting them back into the organisation. So we'll always have an ambition for growth, but we'll always look at how we're sustaining the organisation across the activities that we do. As Rosemary alluded to, we have a number of different organisations that fall under Now Group. So we have Now Group, which is the overarching organisation, and it supports people with learning difficulties and autism. Then we have Loaf Catering, and Loaf Catering has been going for around 10 years now. We have a number of sites and we do corporate catering. And again, that's organisations thinking about social enterprise within their supply chain. If they're spent in any way, they allow us to make impact by providing them with their sandwiches or their canapes. And that's on an ongoing basis through Greater Belfast and more recently into Dublin as well. We are delighted to see much more organisations are thinking about their supply chains and how they're buying with purpose. And we work with a lot of organisations to ensure that's continually reviewed as part of their needs. We have Loaf Pottery, who has been going for about 5 years now, and that's down in Crawfordsburn, if anybody has been down that direction. We do that to allow people to develop their skills within pottery. Paint Me Glaze Me, we have a pizza pottery evenings. It is about an inclusive art space for people for all abilities, and you can link in with us, whether it's on a corporate basis or as a customer. And more recently then, we're providing pottery on for a customer basis, but more recently we have had larger corporate organisations who are again thinking about their supply chain, thinking about their social value as part of the work that they do. And we've had large organisations like Spotify, Airbnb, WhatsApp, Galgorm, people who are thinking better about how they spend, and they're having our loaf mugs in their sites, or they're purchasing them to employees or clients. And again, showing that we're in their supply chain and they're supporting us to add impact. Jamcard, I'm hoping many of you might have heard of, developed by our participants quite a while back now. And that is another social enterprise model. I'll go into that in a wee bit more detail. And then we have Gauge Impact, which again, I'll talk about later. But that is about measuring the social impact that we do, or organisations do on an ongoing basis. If you're doing it, what impact does that make and what difference does that make to somebody's lives? Oh, bear with me. So this is our Jam card. So I just wanted to give you a bit of information around the Jam card, because suppose Jam card is part of a movement where we are delighted to be part of, and we're seeing such a change in people's views around inclusion and diversity, and corporate organisations are definitely getting on board with this and making quite a difference within society. And Jam card is definitely playing a part of that. So Jam card was developed around 10 years ago now, where our participants designed a small card which they can show, which is very discreet when they feel comfortable to do so. And that is not That is not going into the detail about what their disability is or any of their needs. It's just saying they just need a minute. And that's as basic as it is. And on the back of it, we have a number of different messages that are on the back. But initially it was for, I have a learning disability difficulty. We now have a number of variations on that, and the more recent just being, I have a condition, because the people who are requesting this is such a wide spectrum. And we now have around 150,000 jam cards out across the world. And I suppose the jam card business model came about because we recognise that this is a need for people, but we very quickly realised that organisations need trained around how to welcome, firstly, people with communication barriers, but also then how to provide excellent customer service. And that is a social enterprise model that has evolved naturally over the last few years. We now have jam card partners who become, who work with us, and we're supporting them to look at their inclusion and diversity strategy. And that's looking at a number of different training courses which they avail of throughout the organisation. Again, that's looking at their e-learning around what the jam card is, the difference that makes to people's lives, but then looking at how do you welcome disabilities within your organisation? How do you look at your inclusion and diversity recruitment strategy? How do you look at how you're retaining your own staff within your workforce, and how they really add value and to productivity within the organisation? So we're delighted that much more organisations are getting on board with that and welcoming disabilities within the workforce. So the jam card is created through co-design, as I said. It highlights the hidden disabilities and communication barriers. And I think this was the most important thing. This was people wanted this to be able to discreetly show when they had a disability and needed time. They didn't need to go into what that detail was, but it was about how could they have the confidence and that time to go and do things that we take for every day granted, and have that independence, which people should be able to avail of on an ongoing basis. We also have an app which was developed as part of the jam card. And again, the people who are using this have communication barriers. So this was allowing them to rate the experience and share with people where they were getting good experience or bad experience. Again, that was a platform for them to share that experience, which for me was so crucial for people to share where people are actually putting the resources into as an organisation. And I suppose this is how we have changed over the time with the jam card. And I see it with organisations who are much more valuing disability within the workforce. And when we talked about the bisocial aspect of organisations around the social value, it was very much a tick box, whereas now organisations and society is much more thinking about neurodiverse workplaces and how you can celebrate and encourage neurodiversity and disability into the workforce, because it makes a much more productive workforce. I knew from accountants' point of view, people will be interested into the financial journey of jam card, and I think it's always important for us to communicate this for each different business that we operate. So as you can see, the business model of jam card was that we will always provide the jam card for free. We will post that to anybody throughout the world, but the model is that the organisations need to pay to become a partner and pay for the training, because it's valuable training for any organisation. And that is the social enterprise model of jam card. So you can see pre-COVID, we were sitting at a turnover of 105,000. And this year we're projected to finish at 200,000. So it's scaling again. Our next stage for jam card is that organisations are wanting this throughout the world. So we're looking at how we lift this social enterprise model and make it scalable so it can go anywhere within the world. But the impact of the jam card needs to go with that. So we need to continually think about how we're integrating with community, how we're looking at the organisations, as well as the people who are going to use that. And that's on an ongoing basis. I just wanted to include the jobs partner point of view. The jobs partner isn't the social enterprise aspect of the organisation, but it does generate profits which are invested back into the overarching social enterprise. But for organisations, they can get on board about being proactive about how they tap into a new recruitment stream that they possibly hadn't explored further. And they maybe needed a partner to be able to look at that in the greater context. This is an example of Henderson's, who wanted they wanted to look at how they recruit warehousing roles. And we developed an academy for Henderson's, which they paid for. And that was 10 people who went through a 12-week warehousing academy contextualized to Henderson's. And that was 6 weeks theory, 6 weeks on site. And at the end of that, all 10 people got an interview, and 6 of them actually availed of a job at the end of that. And for me, that was really important, that they're now looking at a new audience, and we're supporting to bring them a new audience that they may not have thought about before. And as part of that, then when we place somebody within the workplace, we stay with them for 1 year to provide that support between the manager and them to ensure they're embedded within the organisation, and it supports that culture overall. And our retention rate as part of that within people staying within the workforce is 94%. Which for us is exceptional. And that's what we continually want to ensure, that that's a positive experience for both the employer and the participant. As I had mentioned, Loaf is very much an important part of our social enterprise. So we have currently 2 Loaf cafes in Belfast. One you may have known, which is the Bobbin in the City Hall. And the other one is Loaf Cafe and the Grosvenor Road, the big yellow building as you go into the Royal Victoria Hospital. And that is where we provide our corporate catering from there as well. So sometimes people come in there and just see us as a normal cafe. They don't understand the impact that we're making on the back of that. But that actually provides us with opportunities to provide training academies for our participants. It provides jobs, and it provides obviously business, which we can then reinvest back into the business. And we can then decide what's required for our participants that we don't get direct funding for. And that obviously is part of that social enterprise model. So everybody who orders from us from a corporate point of view supports us to provide that impact. And that is the difference as the social enterprise. We also just opened Loaf in Kilmainham, Dublin over the since last August, which is going really well, and delighted to see that many corporates are getting on board as well for their corporate catering throughout Dublin, which again will allow us to replicate the model down there and grow what we do in the north throughout Ireland. And this is our pottery, as I spoke about earlier. Delighted that organisations are starting to think about how they do corporate events here, how they look at their pottery in their supply chain. And again, this is organisations partnering better with social enterprises and how they can support. They may not be able to do impact directly, but having the right partnerships allows them to be aligned with impact within their local communities. And we work a lot with organisations around the social value aspect of that and how they can deliver on that. And again, from Loaf's point of view, I wanted to show the social value and the financial journey that comes on the back of that. As many people will know, within corporate catering, or within any sort of catering at the moment, it is a difficult market to be in, and we're the same as any other organisation. We don't have funding that goes directly into Loaf Cafe, but we generate a business, and on the back of that, then we're able to create a number of different aspects of impact. So pre-COVID, as you can see, is 1.2 million. We had a real difficult time. We were able to avail of a few different opportunities with the Ulster Museums, which was fantastic during COVID. And then we really had to make decisions about which sites were remaining profitable after COVID, when the costs were up and the income was down, which ones we had to make decisions to close on, and which ones we really had to make a decision to reinvest into so that we could scale back up again. We're delighted that we're projected at the end of this year to be back up to pre-COVID of the 1.2 million. And again, we'll be looking at how we scale that even further throughout the north and the south as part of our opportunities for growth. As I spoke about throughout, we are always looking at what impact we make. And we always, as a business, have to evaluate that. If it's not creating an impact, if it's not a business that's sustainable, why would we do it? We need to make the decisions to stop things quickly. Engage is another social enterprise that we work across a number of organisations throughout North and South to look at measuring the impact that they are creating. And we do that through a social return of investment, where we're evaluating the impact that they're making and then quantifying that with our impact card. So you can see here, it's a bit of a glimpse of it, but for every £1 invested into our organisation, we're able to demonstrate in £20 worth in social value. And we provide that for any person or any organisation that becomes a strategic partner and is working with us across the organisation. But also if you're wanting to look at the social impact you're making as an organisation, we can do that on your behalf also. And I wanted to highlight the challenges, because it's all well and good me telling you about the social enterprises and the amazing work that we do across the organisation. I think it was really important for me to critically tell you, actually, there is a lot of challenges like any business. And there's a few additional ones we have as a social enterprise. So the first one, I suppose, is the impact and the resources. So over time, we went from ensuring that there was limited funding going into the businesses. They were looking at a sustainable model as a business or as a standalone. But we quickly realised the more impact that we want to make directly within a site, then we do need to have funding that directly links to that, or we need to reinvest back in to ensure that we can stand over that as a separate line almost in our management accounts to ensure the financial sustainability of the organisation and the impact then as a secondary part of that. But we have to ensure that they are aligned. So as an organisation, we can see what's financially working and what's not. And that can be a challenge of making sure we're separating them both out and one's not clouding judgment on the other. Like any organisation, we have impact from the economy. And I suppose over the last few years, we really have been testament to how we have got through that impact with the rising costs, and how as a business we have really critically looked at that to ensure that it is sustainable and that we are weathering that, but projecting out as well to make sure as a business we are ahead of that and we're scaling in the right direction. And like any other business, we need to do that in a similar way. Our difficulty is recruiting. Like any organisation, you want to recruit people who have values aligned with you. We have to go that one step further. And when I'm recruiting anybody into our cafes, I have to ensure that their values are aligned for working with people with learning difficulties and autism. They're sharing our mission, our strategic objectives. And you know, they're coming in to work in a cafe and they're doing all of the things that you would do in any cafe or corporate catering setting. But they also need to ensure that they're keen to support people within the workplace. They're passionate about developing people throughout their lives and their independence and supporting them alongside their everyday job. And that can be difficult to ensure that we do that at the interview stage and throughout that. A real challenge that I have is the public perception around both disability, but also social enterprise. And when I work with loads of organisations and I will say, you know, do you have somebody who provides your corporate catering? Would you consider us? Some people will say, oh, I already have a charity. I'm not interested in that. But we have to very much work hard to ensure they see us like any other private sector. We have to deliver at a high quality. We have to benchmark ourselves on a pricing point of view. And we have to ensure that they get the best customer service on the back of that as well. So a lot of the time we have to encourage people to try what we do before we get into a longer term partnership. And community engagement, no matter what we do as a social enterprise model, we will continually look at that community engagement. So Loaf, for an example, during COVID, we done the holiday hunger. And we put out to say, if anybody, it was at the very first stages of COVID, it was a Halloween break. And we'd put out to say, if anybody needs to feed their child, please come down with a password to the cafe and we will ensure you get a lunch pack to take away with you. Marcus Rashford then retweeted that, which then went absolutely crazy. And we provided 1,000 lunches during that week. So again, we see ourselves very much as a business, but we're continually looking at what we can do within community. And I suppose that was one of our decisions to come back quite quickly after COVID to ensure we're continually engaging with community on need. And lastly, the political aspect is always going to have an influence across any business. And I suppose that's something that we continue to look at, whether that is from a funding point of view or as a business, or also around the social value that we're working with organisations on. The political focus will always have an impact on us as an organisation. And that is everything from me. Hope I was within my time.
Oh, no problem at all, Diane. Thank you very much for that fascinating insight into the journey of the Now Group and all the trials and tribulations you faced during COVID, like most of us. There'll be time for questions at the end, but if anybody wants to pop anything into the box now, feel free. We'll now pass over to Phelim Sharvin, who's had sole responsibility for the CFI loan portfolio since 2007, and I'm sure that's been an interesting journey too, Phelim. So over to you.
First of all, I want to thank Rosemary for the opportunity to share the story of Community Finance Ireland. We are a dedicated social finance provider working across the island of Ireland and lending from Northampton to South Kerry. What that has done is allowed us to have a keen insight into the social economy sector, to meet organisations similar to the Now Group across the island and try to help them as they've tried to deliver on their plans. My name's Phelim Sharvin. I head up Community Finance NI. My primary focus is in the northern part of the business, but I've often worked across the business as I've helped colleagues with various projects. We've been in operation at Community Finance Ireland. We've been operational for over 20 years, and that has saw us provide flexible loan finance to social enterprises, to charities, to community-led organisations throughout the island. As you can see from the slide, there's a number of accreditations and regulations and statutory requirements that we need to have in place. And across the NI piece of the business and the ROI piece, we're a registered charity. We're accredited to lend across the island. You'll note there it says we're accredited to lend on behalf of the Social Finance Foundation. The Social Finance Foundation is an organisation that operates primarily only in the Republic of Ireland, where we work with that organisation to find a way to invest into social enterprises and community-led organisations across the Republic of Ireland. In the north here, we've been lending for over 20 years. And one of the things that we've done, you'll see there, is that we've secured a number of fund management contracts with Invest Northern Ireland. So we've diversified to a degree, and that's allowed us to manage concentration risks that exist within our organisation. But it's been an interesting journey for us. You'll see on the slide there that the trends across the social economy sector have changed. Primarily at the outset, Community Finance Ireland, then called Ulster Community Investment Trust, were providing flexible loan finance to help community-led organisations who were primarily engaged in workspace developments. And an example of that would have been the Ballymote Centre in Downpatrick or the Derry Northside Centre in Shantallow and Derry City, where there had been government funding, and then Community Finance Ireland would have provided a shortfall loan to make that project happen. Over the years, we have needed to diversify. We've needed to look at other sectors to support. That has seen us become more involved in areas such as sports and faith. And that has allowed us to manage the concentration across the portfolio, but also to develop facilities and activities in partnership with our borrowers that extend beyond the playing pitch in a sports club. Things like walking trails and meeting rooms and social facilities. So in terms of social impact, it becomes a wider social impact, should I say. And over time, we've managed that trend whereby we've diversified the business. It says there we've got an existing portfolio, total aggregate portfolio of around 30 million. That changes over time as repayments are made, but it's quite a diverse portfolio, and it's well spread across the island. This slide here charts the kind of milestones and developments of the organisation over time. In 1999, we would have inherited a 6.5 million bad debt portfolio from the government departments. These were small community-led regeneration projects in hard-to-reach areas primarily. Many in areas suffering high deprivation and maybe, for example, limited access to services in a rural community where there would be a government support in the form of a grant, perhaps up to about 75% of the project costs, and then Community Finance Ireland would have provided the remainder in the form of a loan. But we managed the government bad debt portfolio, and then we provided our own loans on the back of that as well. Over time, we've been involved further south as we got involved through a cross-border community enterprise programme called Networks. And then we started to lend in the south because it was always within our aims to lend south of the border. And we've done that quite successfully over time. That has allowed us to have more impact across the island, but also to develop certain parts of our business in certain sectors, as I mentioned earlier. So what we did was we promoted a number of sector-specific loan funds. One that was primarily for sports, a fund that was primarily for faith, a childcare support fund, and a green energy support fund. So in each of those funds, Community Finance Ireland was able to provide flexible loan facilities to community-led organisations that were seeking to make a difference. And we were able to do that over time through a range of funds. We also provided an unsecured loan fund, which is a smaller fund. And in recent times, we acted as a grant fund manager for the Department for Communities to allow them to get through that COVID period and safely disperse up to £25 million worth of grant funding out to the wider community sector. So that was a very, very, very good piece of work for us. It was very interesting to be involved with, and we were keen to have those relationships going forward. The last milestone there is a launch of a collaboration with credit unions where we're speaking to them about the support that they want to provide in communities, which we already do. Okay, what is the product offering? The product offering is in essence, the most important thing about the product offering is that it's flexible. We provide term loans and bridging loans. There's a figure there that says generally from 10,000 up to 500,000. In recent times, we've actually assessed some applications up at around 1 million. So we'll take them on a case-by-case basis and we'll do our best to tailor our support that suits the need of the borrower. Bridging loans, normally what can happen there is that we've got some community-led organisations perhaps drawing down a significant amount of grant funding, but perhaps that grant funding is retrospectively paid out. So they need to go and build the project out with the aid of a Community Finance Ireland bridging loan, and then they will claim down the grant funding and repay the bridging loan. So we've done our best to be providing flexible facilities that help these community-led organisations, whether it be a sports club or a childcare project or a trading social enterprise, to deliver on their plans via flexible finance from Community Finance Ireland. Listed there as well as some of the key points about our product offering. There's no arrangement fees. There's no penalties for lump sum repayments or indeed repayment in full. There's no personal guarantees. We try to be as flexible as possible around security, the collateral that we require. And my sense is that we are more flexible than perhaps the normal security requested by retail banks. Okay. I've already charted some of the sectors that we've operated in: the sports, faith, green energy, childcare. There's a range of loan purposes as well. We can provide loan finance that allows, and you'll hear again further into the presentation about some organisations that want to acquire property, they want to purchase, or perhaps they want to refurbish. We also can provide flexible working capital supports that allow the social enterprises that we work with to deliver on their plans, whatever that may be. They might need to buy some specialist equipment. You'll hear about that in one of the client videos I hopefully will be able to show later in the presentation. I think the important thing is that you can see the wide range of clients that we support. It's diverse. It's a diverse mix, and that keeps it interesting. But importantly for us, Community Finance Ireland, in terms of being a social finance provider, we seek to remain accessible, we seek to be as fair as possible, and we seek to be as flexible as possible. Because it needs to be flexible in order to meet the needs of this diverse market. Okay, why social finance? Why need social finance, and why go down that route? Well, Diane charted earlier on the story of the Now Group and how they needed to develop their organisation. There are organisations like the Now Group who are having that social impact, but they are robust, viable businesses as well. We understand that sector. We have considerable track record in that regard, and we want to be as accessible and open to that sector as possible. Anybody that does engage with us, they'll have a dedicated relationship manager who will meet with you on site and get a better opportunity to understand your plans. We are flexible in terms of trying to tailor the loan that suits your needs, not just our needs. And we believe in the relationship approach that sees us develop a relationship with the borrower. We lend money to people. We understand their plans, we understand their drive and their commitment and why they're engaged in a sports club or a domiciliary care project or a tourism project in their locality. And with that, we try to limit the level of bureaucracy, keep the interest rates as competitive as possible, and engage with the borrower on a really flexible basis. There's no fees across the term loans. I think that's a real added benefit for any borrower. And all the profits that we have as Community Finance Ireland, importantly, are reinvested back into the social economy. That's very, very important to us. So when assessing applications from any borrower, there's probably 3 key areas to consider. And Diane mentioned some of these earlier. Social impact, management competency, and repayment capacity. You know, Diane mentioned earlier that the Now project have social objectives. What we're saying to people that want to borrow from us, tell us your story. Clearly articulate your social objectives. And it's surprising how many times when you engage with an organisation that they may not clearly outline their legal status or their borrowing powers, or indeed they may not mention how they measure their social impact. We are very interested in that. We're a social finance provider. We need to understand that. That's a core part of any assessment that we would undertake. So, you know, be able to clearly tell us about the social impact that you're going to achieve, and how that could benefit in your community of geography or your community of interest. In terms of the second piece, where I'm talking about the second area of consideration here, is management competency. And what we're talking about here is, I think it's important to emphasise that we at Community Finance Ireland, we lend money to people. And these are the people who are responsible or who are representing a community of geography, for example, a small community association, Sigfield Community Association, or representing a community of interest, Disability Action, who are representing the community of interest. So we're very keen to understand the senior management teams, the board teams, the staff teams that are in play here, and how they can manage their project clearly, how they can show, bring their skills and experience to bear, and in doing so, manage any risk that is likely across a transaction. The third sector that we mentioned, and it was interesting to hear some of the story that Diane told about the Now Group, about the experience of the Now Group as it sought to be a financially viable business. Well, reinvesting its profits for a social purpose, this is what our borrowers do. We think that's very, very important. When considering repayment capacity, it's also important to measure, I suppose, the adequacy of the project cash flows and the earnings that will ultimately retire the term debt. The similar considerations then a private sector business is applying to any lender. So we need to see earnings that are sustainable across the term of the loan, that are adequate in their size and value, being able to repay the loan, and that are of quality. And of course, many social enterprises have been faced with a challenging market. It was outlined earlier, you know, the reduction in funding can impact negatively on our borrowers who are forced to diversify. I think that's part of the Now Group story as well, and manage the concentration risks that might exist within their business. We understand that, and we want to understand that clearly when anybody applies to us. So these are the areas that we will consider in detail. What information do we look for? Well, a lot of it is the standard information that you would expect. Obviously, there's information within the application form itself, but we need to understand the governing documents of the organisation. We need to, as I mentioned earlier, understand the social impact that is achieved. That's important to us as a social finance provider. But we also want to understand financially or economically the past performance, track record, the current position, and indeed the future position as you project forward. This type of information you'd expect in any business plan are the constituent parts of a business plan. So we're interested in getting that information from our borrowers that allows us to make as an informed decision as possible. But we work with our applicants during this process, and there's a free flow of information, keeping the lines of communication open and understanding the needs of the borrower, and therefore the borrower, the social enterprise, understanding the needs of Community Finance Ireland. As I mentioned previously, the sector is quite diverse. On the side of the slide here, you can see the Northern Ireland portfolio split. In recent times, we have been more prevalent in the sports sector. It accounts for 33% of our portfolio. I think I mentioned earlier previously at the outset, workspace would have been the majority of our portfolio. it now plays a lesser role to a degree at 10.5%. This is in the Northern Ireland portfolio, but the Republic's portfolio, it's of a similar size and similar characteristics in terms of the split. But you can see there from that, there's a range of organisations where a range of sectors that we work that are probably growing: faith, sports, and community services. But we also support childcare. We still support tourism, environment. We have a listening ear, and we want to understand what plans people have out there and how we can support. Also listed on the slide is some of the legal formats that we supported. Companies like the Guarantee would probably be the most common legal format. And more recent times, you would have community interest companies and cooperatives and housing associations. And also you've got your sports clubs that we support through the GA network or IFI, Ulster Rugby networks. Okay, we've got a range of clients across our group, but I thought it'd be a good opportunity to show you a short video, and hopefully these play okay, from two of our organisations, two of our borrowers who both needed flexible working capital facilities that allowed each of them to, I suppose, avail of the opportunity to refurbish their asset base and purchase specialist equipment. So let me see, hopefully this...
I think the word quirky is used an awful lot when people see the cube for the first time. 13 steel containers now converted into offices. That's a wee bit quirky. Dungannon Enterprise Centre is a community business, and its mission is very simple: help businesses start up and help existing businesses in the area grow. A business entrepreneur can come in here for 1 month, try out an idea, and if it doesn't work out, they can leave, or they can stay as long as they can.
This was the biggest unit on the site, so we decided, could we break it up into smaller units which would benefit more people at the same time. Usually they're walking through the doors and it's just like, wow, where did this come from? Because they're totally bamboozled. They haven't seen anything like this in the area of Dungannon or anywhere else.
Like all new ideas, we were caught with a number of costs that we didn't see. We went to community finance, and they were very responsive to what our idea was, and were able to give us the finance to finish the project. The secret to any good business like this would be to share the load. The more people that are involved in a team, the better. And the other thing is you have to stick at it. You do face a lot of mistakes, a lot of naysayers, and you just have to push on past that for it to be a success.
And now I'll move on to the second client video, Clearer Water.
I think
Right, just move on here. Just give me a second.
I think the word...
There we go.
We came together really to develop Ireland's first ethical bottled water company. So there are a number of very unique selling points to this water, but without doubt the most popular one is the ability to trace every single individual bottle, and not just to find out through the trace code on the back about the weather conditions, the pH at source, the composition of the water, but also to link the purchaser with the person behind the water. We're very much about a mixed ability workforce. We've went in the last 12 months from about 4 people being employed in the factory. We now have 11 people working in the factory, and from the 11 working in the factory, 7 are people who have disabilities.
I like the whole social business that you can do. You can talk to the kids, help them teach stuff, and I just like the way we work as a team.
I've never knew how the machines work and everything, and now I know every bit how to work it and everything, and it's so cool.
We're just about reaching the stage now where our customer base is growing the whole time. More and more people are becoming aware of the brand. Critical to the success now of the plant has been our ability to invest in new equipment. That has taken us up, believe it or not, from a production on sparkling water from 200 bottles an hour to 1,600 bottles an hour. So you can see straight away how that has been able to assist the business grow.
Okay, hopefully that gives some indication of the type of organisations that we've supported through flexible loan finance. One is an enterprise agency, Dungannon, who remodelled their existing asset base. Another one is Clear Water, a social enterprise that was established to provide bottled spring water that has since been bought over by a private business. So they're two very, very interesting models where flexible loan finance was required to see them deliver their plans. In this slide here, there's some photos of some of the asset base held by Landmark East. And that's a community-led organisation, a social enterprise that sought to drive regeneration in East Belfast. Their projects impact on a range of sectors, including tourism through the East Side Visitor Centre, retail through the Edinburgh Retail Complex, and essential services through the construction and management of the Bryson Street GP surgery. Community Finance Ireland were able to support Landmark East with flexible loan finance to allow them to deliver on their plans, and it's certainly had a big impact on the locality. The final slide here is another organisation called Artspace CIC, and Community Finance Ireland had a really interesting journey with Artspace as we provided them with a loan at the very outset that allowed them to deliver. It's a community-led disability support organisation that provide tailored support to clients that have a severe mental or physical disability. So we were able to support Artspace through their journey as they have grown over time. They've outgrown a number of premises, and they are seeking to buy their existing premises in Campsie. It's an opportunity for them to build their fixed asset base, and we're delighted to be trying to support them in doing that. I think in general, it can be said that this sector, the social enterprise sector, is resilient, it's impactful. You've heard that from the Now Group as well. And we at Community Finance Ireland are very keen to hear of the plans that anybody has and how we might help them realise their plans. So more than happy to speak to anybody at any stage if they need any further information or advice. I think that's pretty much me. There we go. I think that's the end of that. I'll stop sharing.
Okay. Thank you very much, Phelim. That was a fascinating insight to the work that you do, and I've certainly learned a lot from it. I would say you might have a queue at your door after this.
Well, hopefully.
I mean, I suppose the thing that comes out to me is how flexible you are. The traditional retail banks, you refer to them and they have their own way of appraising things. But at the same time, you have to look at the business plan and the strategic focus of the organisation. And if they're looking to borrow a smaller amount of money, how much detail do you require, or do you point them towards anyone who can help them?
Well, Rosemary, and hopefully everybody can hear me okay. I think it's okay.
Yes, yes.
Rosemary, I think the answer to that is, I've mentioned it a couple of times during the presentation. We have a listening ear. We want to hear what people are seeking to achieve. So we have the flexibility within our team to provide loan finance from look, normally down the lower level. I mentioned there in the slide £10,000, but there's often like we had a smaller scheme where we provided loan finance up to £25,000. But we can. I feel that we can be flexible in that we can assess applications at the lower level, whereby we request the information that is proportionate to the application. Let me say that. I don't feel it is overly bureaucratic or onerous on the borrower, but as we move up through the scales, and I mentioned some of the higher level loan applications that we are receiving, we seek similar information on a different scale. So it's going to be tailored to the needs of the applicant, and I would like to think it's not a painful process, to be honest.
That's very important.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's questions are starting to come in now on the Q&A. Back to Diane, in terms of gauge impact, how do you ensure that the impact assessment is accurate and can be validated? And that's always something that interests me, is how do you measure it?
So we're very rigid in our measurements. So we have to have the evidence of it. We go into whether we're looking at a focus group or a survey. We don't just look at the numbers, or we don't take the numbers from an organisation. We go into depth about what that actually means. And when people do a social return of investment, they're almost a bit like, God, that's a lot that comes with it. You get like a 40-page report. But we need to validate that. We need to make sure that you've got enough information that accredits all of that information, rather than people just want that impact number. But you need to have all of the background information, all of the the work that's being done to evaluate that and pull that together, and then we do demonstrate then the findings as part of the social return of investment.
Okay, thank you. And I know you referred to this as well, Phelim. This is for both of you, really. Have you any idea how much does social enterprise contribute to the NI economy?
There has been some studies recently. I couldn't say for sure. What I can say this, I suspect it contributes a lot more than people realise.
Yeah.
In every sense. If we want to use financial metrics, it'll contribute more than you think. The wider social impact that Diane mentioned and that I've mentioned, it'll contribute far wider than people would expect. And what that does then through those social impacts, it actually saves the public purse in many, many ways. You know, if we think about the savings through the health system by people who are improved health and well-being because of a local social enterprise and the work that they do. So I don't have a headline figure for you, but I recall a number of studies where they talked about the number of people being employed and the actual flow of money through the sector, and it was a lot more than people realised.
Yeah, so there hasn't been an actual report done for quite a few years, as Phelim said, but there's approximately 1,000 social enterprises in Northern Ireland who employ 25,000 staff, and there is a turnover of 980 million. Now, that was a few years ago, so I'm thinking it's a bit higher since that, but that's the impact that is having on the economy. As Phelim said, then the impact on the back of that, the financial aspect of it is a lot more than that.
I think that's part of the course for the sector. The charity sector itself saves the government an absolute fortune, the voluntary sector. And I think the other interesting thing I found around the social finance Phelim was that it's not just capital projects. You'll consider anything basically within reason.
Well, absolutely. Over time, as I said, you know, the stereotypical application at the outset would have been the shortfall funding for a capital project, but it's moved and changed over time. We provide flexible working capital facilities that allows social enterprises maybe to buy, for example, Clearwater had to buy specialist bottling kit. We provide a loan to help them do that. We provide loans to help replace existing bank debt if some of the borrowers think it's maybe not working for them and not maybe perhaps a wee bit too rigid at times. So we've tried to bring a greater degree of flexibility in that regard. So we have refinanced bank debt as well, and equipment purchase, asset refurbishment. Look, there's a range of loan purposes, and it's a conversation to be had, and then for us to understand the plan. I think that's the important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not seeing any more questions coming through. If anybody's any burning questions, as I say, they'll probably be speaking to you both offline after this, just on a personal level. We've more or less come to the hour anyway, so I think it just remains for me just to thank both of you, Phelim and Diane, for the two excellent presentations, and I think we're all a lot more enlightened about the contribution that the social economy makes to the rest of the economy, or the social enterprise makes to the economy. It's those of us who work within the charity sector know it's huge, but I think it's bigger than anybody thinks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both for your time, and thank you everybody for attending.